we are live. Let's go live with Jack Kelly and the one, the only Claire Davis, the proprietor of Traction Resume, recruiter extraordinaire. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Jack. I've been waiting a long time to be on your show. I'm so thrilled. I was actually just catching up on a couple of your recent guests, Virginia and Mary last week, just really wonderful coaches. So I'm honored to be here. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So you know what? I like to jump into this too right away, because if I understand correctly, you started out as a pharmaceutical salesperson. So you're used to sales. And I am a big believer in sales. I think that's a superpower. As a recruiter. I consider a lot of what I do is sales, but most people, not so much. What do you think about applying your experience as a salesperson / recruiter for job seekers and also for people who are just trying to advance their careers?
Oh my goodness, this is such a wonderful question. And I had a sort of an interesting twist with the start of my career, because I was able to see from multiple different facets of the job search and the hiring function. So when I first started out, I was an associate at a pharmaceutical sales recruiting firm. So we helped pharma reps get jobs. And then from there, I thought, wow, I mean, I want to go into medical sales. This sounds like a wonderful industry. So I had a chance to actually be in the field. And then now I'm a medical sales career coach. So I would say that what's really unique about that experience is that now I've been on every side of the table. I've been the one hiring, and I've been kind of, connecting the hiring equation. I know earlier you and I were chatting about how recruiting can even feel a little bit like matchmaking or dating at times. And I think the core of that for everybody listening today is that really there's a lot of persuasion that goes into what you're doing when you're trying to promote yourself for right fit roles on every side of the table. So what I love about your message, and what I love about what a lot of your guests have shared as well, is that really when it comes to our career, we're not just sharing with people that we're okay and like we exist in the space and we've done some things. When you are trying to advance your career, you are 100% in sales. So take everything that we talk about today as part of how you can enhance your selling of yourself in your career.
So now what I found out over the years when I interview as a recruiter people, they don't tend to sell themselves. There's a lot of, here's my resume, here's what I've done, and that should speak for itself. And I'll tell them, no, that's just one part of it. You got to really sell it. And I'll add to it. I like how you said about persuasion, Claire, because that's a really interesting thing that people don't talk about. So it's not only sales, but you need to persuade people why they should like you, right? Why they should hire you, why they should give you a promotion, why they should give you, a bonus. So how would you say, like, for somebody who is, let's say, in between jobs, or even somebody who has a job but wants to get a better job, to use kind of sales and persuasion to get that opportunity?
Yeah, that's such a great question. So first, I'm gonna shine a light on your most recent guest right before me, Daisy Wright, because something that she shared, I absolutely loved. And she was framing it in the sense of a lot of times when we're presenting ourselves in our career stories in an interview, we're taught to frame them up in the STAR format, which, if you're not familiar with the STAR format, it's situation, task, action, and results. And essentially it's how to frame a story so it's compelling and talks about your impact. But what she said was that the most important part of your story is the A and the I. And she wasn't talking about artificial intelligence. What she meant was talking about the actions you took and the impact it made. So with that in our lens, what I would say is that if you're between jobs, and believe me, I have been there before too, and we can talk about
how many times should I ask?
5 times, Jack.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, I don't know if anybody else has wears 5 layoffs as a badge of honor. Now I get to, because once you have to start over that many times, you get really, really good at telling your story in a way that will move the needle for your career, right? So a couple things I learned from that were that when you're between jobs, that's when you recognize, oh, I should have been doing some things when I was happily employed so that I could continue the advancement of my career when these types of situations inevitably happen.
Mhm.
Because there's nobody on the planet, I would bet my name on it. There's no one on the planet that hasn't heard of someone who's been let go or laid off or lost a job today. It used to be something that was sort of unusual back in the day. If you'd asked me, like, 15 years ago, if we had layoffs on our resumes, it was like 1 in 20, and we would address it on the resume, but it was kind of a special scenario. But now it's very common, which is a bonus because not a bonus really, but a benefit, because now that it is so common, it's taking a bit of the stigma out of it. So it's not so much this thing that, we need to fear or think that people will not understand, because most everyone understands what a layoff looks and feels like now, or at least knows someone who
Yeah.
does. So between those jobs, though, that's when you have an opportunity to, one, recognize, hey, I need to get in the driver's seat of my career. And the way that I might do that is networking while I'm happily employed, and also maintaining my career documents like your resume and your LinkedIn profile. But also, it's a great opportunity for, anyone who's listening to go back through their experience and start to identify what their unique value is. And I like to think of it as the way you solve one problem is typically the way you solve all problems, or at least to some degree. And what's unique about that is that once you start to take the time, which sometimes you don't have when you're happily employed, but
Yeah.
when you have that little opportunity to take the time and go back through your experience, you can start to see the through lines for your career. So maybe when you were working as a lifeguard at the pool in high school, and you noticed that the kids who were going down the slide were always, jump in line before the person at the bottom was out yet. Oh, how did you solve that problem? Some people would probably put manpower on it. Other people might say we need better pool regulations. Others might say, hey, look, I've got a
Mm.
green card and a red card. You hold up the green when it's ready, or keep the red up when it's not. So little things like that, sometimes it takes that career gap to really have the moment to go through your career and think, okay, what about me is the way that I solve problems and is the way that I do business that people really love me for? And I'm pretty sure I tangented way far away from your original question. So,
No,
yeah.
no, it makes a lot of sense. And I think
Mm.
one of the things too is that to go back to what you're alluding to is that you want to you want to hedge your bets so
Yeah.
that what if you're most people wait till either they're let go or
Mm.
they're miserable where they are to start looking for a role. And I think what you were kind of saying is that wait, maybe hedge your bets. So instead of waiting for something to go wrong, start getting in touch with recruiters, build up your network, cultivate your network, maybe get in touch with a career coach, a resume writer, so that if and when you decide to leave, or maybe you're pushed out, you don't have to start from square one. So this way
Yeah.
you're kind of straddled. And plus, maybe you've had some informational interviews, maybe you had some, real interviews. So then you're
Mhm.
kind of ready, as opposed to just go cold right into it. So
Yeah.
I think that's really important for people to do, because I think a lot of people don't do that. They just wait for the worst, and then they
Mhm.
scramble and they're freaked out, and their self-confidence is shot because they're in between jobs. So this way they're prepared. So I think
Well,
that really makes a lot of sense.
yeah, I love how you tied it together and really get us back on track there. And what I see a lot of times, Jack, is someone will call me and say, "Hey, Claire, I need a resume, but I'm really ashamed
Mhm.
of my document, or I don't have one and I can't believe it because I've been in a career
Yeah.
successfully for 25, 30 years." But the thing is that a lot of times we get a bit complacent, a bit comfortable when we're out there winning.
Yeah.
When you're out there doing well in business, the resume can often get kicked to the back burner because you're focusing on all the objectives you're looking to achieve for work. And that's completely normal. So in that case, I would encourage everyone to at least take one of two avenues. First, you can either take the time and set some reminders for yourself to continue to nurture your career throughout the year. And it doesn't have to be an overwhelming task. Even setting a reminder on your phone for every 6 months to make sure that you brush up your resume and add some measurable accomplishments to that resume will serve you so well in the long run. You're not going to forget things. You're going to keep it fresh. And should you be next to someone on the water slide who you know you want to work at their company too, and you strike up a conversation and they say, oh yeah, shoot me your resume later, you're already 99% of the way there. The other way I recommend people go about this is to work with somebody like a career coach, because it's that accountability factor and someone who can help manage your career documents and the strategy for your career, just like you would hire a financial coach or a landscaper or anybody who will help you to maintain. Those are two really solid ways to keep yourself from getting flat-footed.
I didn't think about it till just now. Is
Mhm.
it possible that when people don't have a resume or just
Mhm.
have like a haphazard resume, is that it's almost like psychs them out that if they did have a resume, you know what I mean? Like say,
Mm.
if I'm putting together a resume, am I foreboding, that something's going to happen to me? So I'm not going to write that resume. It's like writing a will or getting life insurance. Right? Like you don't want, if you're getting life insurance, you're like admitting, all right, I'm going to die one day and I'm going to get life
Right?
insurance, right? If I write a will, like, oh my God, this is real. So
Yeah.
I didn't occur to me as like you're talking about it. Do you think that's something that's why people don't put it together and and if they do, they just do a crappy job because they just don't want to face like, oh my God, if I'm doing this, this is for real. I'm going to maybe switch jobs, you know what I mean? Or maybe I'm going to lose my job.
Well, it might be the same feeling they feel
Yeah.
like, when a recruiter calls you, or when
Right.
candidates call you, Jack, and just because they're curious, or maybe
Mhm.
you've reached out to them and they're
Mhm.
open to the opportunity that you
Yeah.
have to just chat about it. Um, I like to flip that on its head. I'm a big fan of manifesting your opportunities.
Mhm.
And part of that might just be, maybe it's a little less of I'm going to lose my job if I work on my resume, as much as it's I'm going to start seeing more opportunities out there while I'm working on my resume. Because I can tell you that 100% of the
Mhm.
time, when I started to invest in getting my resume done, interviewing informationally, and starting to really amp up my network, that's when the opportunities start coming your way. And the universe conspires to help you in whatever way, you believe, whoever is listening. But I can tell you that when you start looking for opportunities, you will see them. But there is a trick to that, because something that happens often
Mhm.
is that when we're in that situation of despair, or when we're in that situation of doubt because things are shaky with the investors at our company, or the data didn't come through that we needed to justify the product launch. So, and for those of you who haven't met me yet, I focus primarily in the healthcare space and in medical sales. So, so a lot of my examples are from there. But those kinds of things can give you a bit of an uneasy footing, and you know that something's coming. But if you start to prepare, you will notice that there are other opportunities out there, simply because you're putting yourself in the way of those opportunities. So it's interesting what you say, because you're right. The actions that we take definitely manifest our reality.
So let's
Absolutely.
talk about that. Let's
Have
talk,
you had that experience? Has
ye-
this happened to you before?
yes. And that's what
Okay,
I'm kind
tell
of
us.
really I'd like to maybe talk a little bit about it, or you could share a little bit about it so people understand what we're talking about. So like manifestations,
Mhm.
affirmations,
Yep.
mantras, visualization. What other kind of things fit into that category? Is there anything else to add, or that's kind of,
Oh
or at least
gosh.
that's enough to do for now? So,
I think for me with any of those,
yeah.
there's like a specific trick to them. And trick's probably the wrong word, but the more specific that you can get about any of those things, that's where I see the faster results are happening.
Wait, so let's say,
So,
so for a
okay.
manifestation, right? For people who are not aware, like how would you describe that for people who aren't aware of like what manifestation is and how does it work?
Sure, I'll tell you a great story about that.
Okay.
So I was working with a gentleman last year and he called me absolutely distraught. He had been at a company, taken over a territory, and the short story is there were some things behind the curtain that he wasn't aware of, and he wasn't able to fix those things in the territory, and they let him go in 6 months. Now, this is a gentleman who has absolutely topped the charts at all of his other therapeutics companies until he came to this one and unwittingly entered into a situation he couldn't fix, and it became a real turning point for his career. So he gets the boot and he sees a video on LinkedIn. I think I was talking about how if you start your resume with, I have 25 years of experience in such and such industry, we need to talk. And he called me up and he said, "Hey, I saw your video and I'm interested in what this whole career advancement, career coaching and resume writing is all about." So we work together and find out that he is an expert in commercialization. And, he's been at the regional level, but he's seen it 6 ways to Sunday in academic centers. He's worked in community centers. He's generated major numbers, and he's had the opportunity to launch a lot of projects, soup to nuts. So we start talking about this corner that he is the expert in, and turns out it's really where he finds the most enjoyment in his career, right? And really, if anyone listening is thinking, well, I mean, there are parts of my career I enjoy, but like I could never lean into that.
Mhm.
I am here to tell you today, lean into that, because typically where you find the most enjoyment and the most flow and ease within your career is your zone of genius. And we're all sitting back watching you wondering, holy smokes, how do they do that so easy? So lean in where it feels right. So the short story about manifesting was we ended up talking a lot about how his commercialization strategies were working in the field and how he had these great ideas about how it's really step by step. And maybe he would want to get into the commercialization seat, the CCOs, the chief commercialization officer suite.
Mhm.
And sure enough, today that's exactly where he is. So in 1 year, he went from, I'm absolutely frustrated with my job, I'm going to reach out for help. I now have identified that I have this expertise that I didn't even recognize was unique to me. Now I know how to talk about it. Now I know who to talk to about it. And now I'm doing it. And so I think that manifestation is really powerful when you start to get specific about what it is you want to do. And also, what are the ways that you are uniquely great at bringing solutions to other people to solve their problems? And, Jack, before I know you and I know before we started recording, we were talking a lot about how when you're trying to get into a job you love and find a right fit job, you're really in sales for yourself.
Mhm.
It's really about putting your sales and marketing hat on at that point. And when you do, that's when the real momentum starts. So that's my story.
Can I kind of go back to manifestations and give you a personal example?
Please,
But
yes.
so, like a lot of recruiters, you don't grow up saying, "Hey, I want to be a recruiter." So that when you were a little kid, you go, "Do you want to be an astronaut? Do you want to be a doctor, a fireman, or a
Yeah.
recruiter?" A recruiter doesn't like what, one thing doesn't belong with the other, right?
Yeah.
So most recruiters, and I don't mean to disparage other recruiters, myself
Mm,
included, is that you fall into it. And when I
mhm,
say you fall into it, meaning like you fail at a whole bunch of other things. And then finally
mhm.
you go into recruiting because recruiting doesn't, it's a very low bar of entry. You don't have to do any licenses or accreditations. You don't have to have a degree. You don't have to be too bright. And you can just say, I'm a recruiter. So you fall into it. So I fell into recruiting. And I had the mindset of like, hey, I did a several, different jobs and, beforehand, just whatever, it didn't work out. And I was at an age now, like, I got to make something happen.
Mm,
And in my mind, I'm like, okay, I don't know anything about recruiting, but I'm going to make this work. And back in my mind, I always wanted to have my own business. I'm not sure why. I think there's an old story about like my grandfather had a shoe store and it was really cool. So I was always like, I always wanted to be like, have my own business. And so
yeah.
I had this mindset that, hey, I want to make in my mind, I had a certain amount of money I wanted to make. And, I wanted to build a business. And, Claire, I'm telling you, it's so weird. Like
Mm,
it would happen organically in my mind. Like every day throughout the whole day, it would be like a loop playing in my head. You know
mm,
how people like get negative thoughts and that negative loop is in the head and it's terrible. This was more of a positive one saying, okay, you're going to do this. You're going to make this amount of money. This is what you're going to do. And it went on for years and it worked. It was crazy. And then things would come to me like job orders, candidates. And then you talked about the flow before. The same thing. Then
mhm.
you get in that flow and then you're just going and you're doing and you're just part of this whole thing. And you look, at your watch and go, oh my God, how is it after 5 o'clock already? How,
Yeah.
like, did I fall asleep? So it's a weird thing. And I didn't even really know about manifestation. I didn't know what it was until later on.
Mhm.
When I read about it, it was just something that it was a weird thing that just kind of clicked in out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Does that make any sense or
Yeah.
is that completely weird?
No, it totally makes sense. In fact, I love how specific you were about the goal.
Yeah.
Even if it was subconscious at first, you knew I
Yeah.
want to own my own business. And I would
Yeah.
also likely guess, just knowing you as I have
Mm.
come to know you over the years, that you also uniquely knew you wanted to help people, which I think
Yeah.
that there are a lot of different goals, but I find you to be a very um, authentic person, really hinged on helping other people.
Oh,
And
100%.
and,
But
and
it's
you know,
can I tell you though? It's selfish though in a way. Seriously, this is weird. This is also weird. It's selfish in a way, Claire, because by helping somebody, right?
Mhm,
Let's say I play somebody and now they could, get a better home. Maybe now
mhm,
they could have that other kids that they didn't want to have because they felt money was tight. They could
mhm.
have money to put away for college. So like you get such like pleasure from that, from
Yeah,
like helping people.
yeah.
So like in addition, I'm not gonna lie, the money is great too, of course. But
Mhm,
but like it's so weird. Like the calmer you get and you feel like when you made a difference in someone's life, it's like
yeah.
it's amazing. It really is. It's like one of the best highs. It's like better than having a drink, better than, I don't know. I've never done heroin, so I don't know how that is. But I'm sure it's like, I guess it's kind of up there in a way where like, you're like, wow, this is so
Yeah,
cool. I was able to help this person make their life better. And then it
that's
feeds on
amazing.
itself. Like, I want to do it again because I love that feeling. So in a bizarre
Mhm.
way, yes, I like helping people, but there's an intrinsic value you get internally when you do good stuff and you help people. It's weird.
Yes.
I don't know like how that is or why that is, but then that works because then you're motivated to keep doing it because
Yes.
you like doing it and you see the results.
Okay, so can we transition that
Yeah.
just a bit into, okay, well, first of all, I have a something I learned from a wonderful rep who counseled me when I very first started in medical sales down in, I was helping this woman, her name's Jen, down in LA. And she was the first person who I really recognized that competition was obsolete for her. And I don't mean that she had her head buried in the sand or that she didn't recognize the high stakes of the industry that we were in. But for Jen, we would walk into a hospital, and where some people might, like, kind of scoot the other competitors' brochures aside and put theirs in front, or like, kick
Yeah.
shut the door in someone's face or whatever. Jen went in, she knew every single competitor's name at the hospital. She knew their kids' names. She knew birthdays, and she'd take them out to lunch. And she created this environment of camaraderie, even with her competing business. Right. In fact, I remember this one time we were in a case And the physicians at the time, we were selling a diagnostic test for women who had ovarian cancer. We would
Mhm.
take a piece of the cancer and then have it tested in our lab. Well, you need kits for that. And they had run out of our kits for the day because we had ordered as many as we had. And so instead of saying, oh no, don't order that today, or let me run to another hospital a few hours away, can you wait? She opened up the competitor's kit and said, here, let's use an Oncotype for this. This woman can't wait. She needs her results right now, right? And the physician was like, well, yeah, but like, that's your, okay, and it generated such incredible goodwill that every time I worked with Jen, it just felt good
Mhm.
because there wasn't this heaviness of competition. There wasn't this feeling of desperation or lack because we were just all arm wrestling each other to get in the OR. It was, we're here to help the patients that we're meant to serve, period. And whoever here is part of that equation, we're going to help them too, to make sure that the women who need this kind of treatment get the kind of treatment that they need today. So going off of your manifesting and how that feels really good to help other people, I feel like that was the first segue I also had into how helping other people and leading in that way can really also alleviate a lot of the stress that comes from competition, whether in business or interviewing for a role or getting laid off and not knowing what to do. Because when you look at it that way, as a blue ocean strategy, as everyone has their own thing they're bringing to the table, and we're all just trying to go home at night to our families and do our best job. It helps me, and I think it helps our people who are listening today. I hope it helps you to focus on what's at the end of the rainbow that we're trying to provide today. So yes, you're going to go and interview with this company, and yes, there's 35 other people who are also interviewing, but what challenge are they trying to solve at this company? And it allows you to shift the focus from, am I presenting myself perfectly? And am I saying all the right things? And am I using all of the right star formats to get my stories across? And instead, it makes us better questioners and listeners to get to the root of what the company hiring us or interviewing us really needs solved. And that, for me, is the kicker. Because when you start to really get close to what your target, so the ideal hiring team, is trying to solve, they will tell you what they need from you, what they're looking for you, and you'll organically know if you're the right fit, and you'll know what to bring up about your experience. And that, for me, is great selling. It's not beating everybody every time and just being this like magical persuasive salesperson. That, to me, is not the real heart of selling. And I think you and I talked about this before, that selling gets a bad rap.
Mhm.
What sales really is deeply understanding what the challenge or the pain is of the person we're trying to help, and doing whatever we can to help alleviate that pain. That, for me, is exactly what it is. It's consistent with being in the OR and having a diagnostic product that will help a patient, and also consistent with sitting in that hot seat in the interview and saying, I am not going to sweat about my answers being absolutely perfect today. Instead, my goal is going to be, do I deeply understand what the challenge is that they are facing on this team, enough to the point where I can know that I am the right person to solve it, and bring them evidence to substantiate that claim? That, for me, is great selling.
I love it. And if I could add on to it a little bit,
Please.
to your story, it's a little bit of Sun Tzu as well, where Art
Mm,
of War, where, because interestingly enough, I've done that also in terms of, my career. And there's lots of recruiters that you're competing against. I've always put on blinders,
yeah.
and like, okay, I'm focused on me and what I have to do and my objectives and my goals. And I can't lose sight of that. I have to be laser driven, because if not, I'm looking at this person over, what are they doing? Oh, what's my competitor over here doing? And what are they doing? And then it just throws you off your game. But
Mhm.
if you just kind of have tunnel vision and say, okay, I know what I did, I know I have this job order to fill, that job order to fill. I got to reach out to this person to get that job order. I have my game plan and I just got to execute. And if I start looking what someone else is doing and how much money maybe they're making,
Mhm.
it just, I don't know, it just doesn't work. But it works if you
Yeah.
just kind of hyper focus on what's important to you, not worry about the competition. Um, I don't know. It does. It seems to just flow
Yeah.
better. And then also similarly, the way you described it, this was so weird. I don't think they do this kind of what you did in pharmaceutical sales pre-COVID.
Mhm.
Let's say there's a job order, with Morgan Stanley, right? And they'd have the recruiters come in and you'd have like 5, 6 different recruiters from different search firms all sitting around the table and we're all competing against each other, which is
Oh,
so
wow.
awkward and weird because
Yeah.
it's an eat what you kill. Like
Yeah.
if somebody gets that job order and they're going to get a nice fat commission, everyone else goes home empty.
Mhm.
So it's a crazy thing. But even then, to your point, I would always engage with the other people. I'd
Yeah.
always talk with them because I felt it. Why am I going to create enemies? And like, why am I going to have this animosity that's going to weigh me down? Because who knows? Maybe one day they come over and join my company. So I always tried, to engage, to work with them, just like you were saying, and collaborate with them. And then it pays off in the long run because then you'll get somebody down the road who'll say, "Hey, Jack, you know what? I know you specialize in legal and compliance. I don't do this, but I got this job order. Should I send them your way? Because I don't know how to." I'm like, "Oh, thanks." So these things do work out, right?
They really work out.
Yeah.
They really work out. And it's nice to know that goodwill does win the day
Mhm.
a lot of times if you lean into it. And I'm not surprised to hear that about you in the least, that you treated everybody with dignity and fairness. It just really is, it is who you are. Um and it's nice to see because I know personally how cutthroat recruiting can be. So yeah,
Oh,
that's the
it's really
way.
cutthroat. Is it the same way with pharmaceutical sales? Like if you don't get to that doctor, you lose out and the next one gets it. Is that
Oh,
similar or
yeah.
yeah?
Well, it's in very much so. So my experience actually in the field was I didn't have the chance to sell for pharma, but instead was in diagnostics. So
Mhm.
ours was a lot of, you gather tissue, we have a proprietary test that's sent, and then they figure out what the patient and physician should do following those results. So it was very cutthroat, but at the time there weren't as many tests on the market as there are today. Now, I mean, laboratory sciences and testing is one of the fastest growing segments of medical sales. And the reason is because, it's just kind of a new and recalibration of all the different algorithms that are applied to the data we can get from a cell or from blood, right? So it's fast growing and absolutely competitive. But I would say that the other piece that's really interesting to watch is that this year alone, we have had more than half of the work that we've done for, our resume clients have come from the big med tech companies, so the big med device companies. And what's interesting is the model has really shifted in healthcare from, I go into a hospital with my widget, and if the doctor likes the widget and feels like it would be helpful, more helpful than the old widget, we'll buy the new widget. But now it's all about enterprise sales. So I would come in and I would be from, you know, Schmed Schmronic or Friker, right? Like
Yeah,
one of those two really
right.
big med tech giants. And I would say, okay, well, I have this suite of products that will serve the entire orthopedic floor. And
Hmm.
so it's really exceptionally competitive in med tech because you also have these smaller companies that have been pushed out for these enterprise accounts and they are fighting like heck to get back in that hospital just in that little corner. So it's a really fascinating industry. It's a lot of expert selling, it's a lot of partnering with physicians, and even there's a new model that's a lot more like distributor models. So in orthopedics, maybe you work with a physician and then you know what that specific physician's needs are. And so you bring him all the tools that you have found have been the best from other companies, and you are the one source to deliver them to that doctor. So it's really interesting how the model
Mhm.
has changed, but at the core of it, and at the core of getting a great job in this industry, which applies to all industries, I would say, is still creating those really strong relationships and asking great questions and being invested in finding out the answer. Because whether or not you're trying to sell an enterprise model, or you're trying to be a distributor for a doctor, or you're trying to get into an amazing company, it's all about developing the trust with the person you're speaking with so that they know the problems they present you with, you will be the first one to work the hardest to go get the answer for them, even if you don't have it right now. So there's a
It's really,
lot of parallels in selling
yeah.
and career advancement.
And you know what? I find out this with career coaches, resume writers, when people come to you and others
Mm,
like yourself to get help. You could spot, it's like the canary in the coal mine. You could spot trends. Like, what are
mm,
you seeing when people come to you now? Is it within the health sector? Are they because they lost jobs, or
mm,
things are good and they're looking to get a better job or find ways to grow within the organization? Do you see any
mhm.
trends happening?
The trend I see right now is the it, more frequent waves of layoffs. So
Hmm.
where major tech companies might have laid people off once every year, right? And there are some horror stories that I'm sure if you're near the medical sales space or know anything about big med companies, there are some that are so cutthroat that if you land in that bottom 10%, you're just gone.
Yeah.
But it would be like a once a year thing. And now, unfortunately, with all of the shifting sands and the different ways that companies are working, um, we'll say recalibrating themselves, we're seeing 2 and 3 waves of layoffs at certain companies, which is unusual. The other thing that's really unusual in healthcare right now is that, and Jack, you'll probably be able to
Mm.
echo this as well. Traditionally, summer is a slow time
Oh,
in
yeah.
recruiting and job placement. June, July, and August have been our busiest months of the entire year.
Really?
That was shocking to me. I mean, and I'm here for it, but at the same time, it was really surprising to me. So I think that there was a sort of lull earlier in the year, in the spring, when ChatGPT came out and people wanted to try that. The market had a lot of uncertainty in it. Certainly, healthcare companies had a lot of things that they were putting on pause because of the market. And it was a waiting period for about 60 to 90 days. And then June hit and bam,
Mhm.
everybody's like, okay, now's the time. I see the things changing. I need to get my resume done. I need to go and make sure that I'm being on the offensive, because if something changes at my company, which is happening more and more and more in medical sales right now, I want to be ready. So I'm glad to see it. I think that it's a good wake up call to see markets shifting in this way, because you just don't know about some of the factors you may not even be privy to that'll affect your longevity at a company. So being ready before it's necessary is something that we like bang the drum on
Mhm.
all the time. In fact, we just started a program, which I don't think I've told you about yet, but we do a subscription program for our clients, because once they realize, oh my goodness, I need to get this resume in order, then who's going to keep it that way, right? Because you're still just as busy being the
Mhm.
CCO. You're still just as busy running your region. So I'm really glad that there is a small silver lining to the layoffs and to the industry right now, the upheaval in the industry. And I think that's a greater awareness about how we tend to become comfortable and a little bit complacent sometimes when things are going well. But at the same time, we should put just as much focus on being ready should we need to or have to make a move. Yeah. What kind of
It's,
trends are you seeing?
interesting enough, like, kind of similar. It seems that
Uh-huh.
when you had Silicon, because we place more Wall Street, so you
Okay.
had Silicon Valley Bank go, belly up. You had First Republic, you had Signature Bank. Then there's all these fears about a banking crisis.
Mm,
Then you have Ukraine in the background. So you definitely saw that, like, slow, everyone's worried. But then, yeah, like about a month or so ago, starting to see like little like, okay, hey, here's another job that came in. Here's another job. It's still
Yeah.
slow going. It's still definitely slow going. And it's still slow because HR person's out on vacation, then he or she gets back, and then the hiring
Right.
manager goes away and the candidate. So it's still a little slow. But it definitely seemed to be like, okay, the world didn't come to an end. We're still
Mhm.
going on. Okay, now we can start hiring a little bit again. So I
Mhm.
definitely see that. But to go back to layoffs, Claire,
Yeah.
so you had, if you're comfortable talking about it, from what you had a couple of layoffs. Now,
Yeah.
are there any lessons learned for you? Any lessons you can impart to people, or is this one of the reasons maybe you decided to kind of go into, helping with resumes, giving career advice, figuring, hey, I kind of gone through this myself. I want to help people to
Yeah.
navigate for them.
Yeah, it's a loaded question, huge
Yeah,
question. Thank you so much for asking. I love sharing this story because
yeah, okay.
my hope is that
I
it
didn't mean to
gives
put you in a
other
bad
people hope.
spot. So,
No, I'm
oh,
so
okay,
glad you
okay,
asked. I
okay.
love talking about layoffs, and believe me, it was about a decade until I
Mhm.
loved talking about layoffs, right? Because when you get laid
Yeah,
off, it hits you in a lot of ways you don't expect. Certainly financially and
yeah,
stability wise, but then your pride takes a huge hit. I mean, you really do start questioning your worth. And you tell yourself that I'm more than just my job and my title does not define me. But where do we spend the majority of our day and derive the majority of our fulfillment and
yeah,
our self-worth? It's work. Until you're a parent and then you're, constantly managing children. But that's okay.
yeah,
That's lovely too. So I would say that for anybody who is considering that layoffs could potentially be happening at their company or they've been through a layoff, listen to this story. So I came out of school bright-eyed and bushy-tailed.
yeah,
I had been working as an associate in a pharma recruiting
mm,
business, and so I knew all the tricks, right? I was counseling people 15, 20 years my senior on how to close an interview at age 13. Like it just was part of the
yeah.
conversation. And I remember, Jack, when my family and I would go out to dinner, me and my dad and my mom, we'd kind of round table at like a Chinese restaurant or something. We'd be eating our wontons and talking about if Sally closed the hiring manager,
Wait,
right?
were your
Like that
parents,
was our life.
were they in that business too, or no? Your family?
Yes, this is
Oh,
their business. Yeah.
oh, wow. Okay.
So my mom opened the business after she learned how to be a great recruiter working for other people as well, and then thought, I could do this. I'm going to open my own. And she did, and they did well. And that's where I learned a lot of the underpinnings of how to write a resume, how to convey your value to somebody in short order, how to conduct yourself in an interview, and, wear a suit and make sure you clean up
Yeah,
before you get in that interview
right.
seat, right? So really it was always part of the equation. So I get my degree, I get into my first job because I was going to be this marketing maven. And it's going well. And after 6 months in 2008, if anybody remembers
Ooh,
that year in the home industry, all our clients were high-end home appliances and half of us get laid off. And so I cried and I drove home and thought I'm worth nothing. And, all the things that you don't want to
mhm,
think, but you do. And I ended up getting back into another job and that was all right. And I thought, surely lightning can't strike twice. So the next piece, I ended up working up for through some connections for a group. It was that diagnostic company I'd mentioned earlier, and I met with the hiring manager and their team, and they were just vibrant. They were so excited about what they were doing, and it was kind of marketing, kind of sales, and I was like on fire for this. And they're like, "You should come work here. Interview next week." I met just the right people. I had my resume together because I was a recruiter's
yeah.
daughter, and I got that job, and it was amazing. And 18 months later, I got laid off again. And so now I'm thinking, oh no, I can't. Not only
Yeah.
does lightning strike twice, like in less than 2 years, like this is just bizarre. And why me? And all these things. So this comes to pass. This is going to happen 3 more times, but I don't know this yet. But what I found out after one more layoff after this one was that I had a client who called me from 2 positions earlier, and I was really down because I thought, I can't hold a job of all people. And I just don't even know if I am good at this selling thing. I've won some awards, but if I can't hold this gig, um, there's no, how can I
Mm.
possibly, even continue going into to sales and marketing? Like, am I really worthy of this? And I had an old client call me because I never changed my phone number. That's a hot tip. Don't change your phone number if you don't have to. And he said, "Hey, Claire, listen, I'm in the OR," and I think he was from Alta Bates, and which is a hospital down in outside of San Francisco. And he says, "Hey, I'm in the OR and we need a kit. We're completely out and we've got something coming out right now. Can you get us a kit?" And I said, "Hey, that's so nice. I'm so glad you called. I'm so glad you're sending that sample. I don't. I'll coordinate it for you. I'll call the person who works in your region now at the company." But I said, though, I don't. I actually don't work there anymore. Did you know that?" And he goes, "Yep, I know." And I said, "Oh," I said, "Well, why? I'm glad you did, but like, why did you call me?" And he said, "Well, because I know you, and I I knew that if I called you, you would do whatever you could to make it right as fast as you could." I'm getting chills like telling you the story.
Mhm.
And it was the first time that I realized that people like doing business with me, not because I was the precision rep or because I was the marketing girl from Merlot, but because they liked the style of work that I brought to them and that they trusted me as a professional. So, what the layoffs taught me right then, because I knew how to write a resume and I knew how to get a job and interview and job search and network and all those wonderful things, which are all the big tools you need in your toolbox. I mean, you need all that for the puzzle. What I didn't understand until that moment was that there was something unique about me that people enjoyed doing business with. And it went beyond what I had on my name tag. And so now when I work with people and we write their story on LinkedIn, we do their LinkedIn profile or we write their resume, and maybe they've been through some tough times, layoffs. Maybe they tried to launch a product, but they just could not get the FDA to approve it. They could not make it through to get that trial to fly. And they're just feeling like, I'm a huge failure. You're not a failure. In fact, you tried. And that's so much more valuable than never trying at all. And frankly, there's something unique about every single person, everybody listening today. There's something unique about you and the way that you do business, which people absolutely love you for. And you got to find out what that is. You got to go back through your recent experience. You go through your career, think about how did you solve problems, and when something just flopped, what did you do? When those kids were jumping line in the slide, how did you fix that at the water park? And when you identify what your unique value proposition is, and you can connect it to the hiring team's challenge that they're trying to solve, that's magic. That's why working with a resume writer or working with a career coach unlocks things for people, because we're often too close to our story. If that gentleman never called me from the OR, I might never have thought about it like this. I would not have thought, oh, he trusted me for something because of it was me. I should find out what that sounds like and learn how to talk about it.
Mhm.
And that's exactly how I think, if you want to get anywhere in your career, if you're trying to pivot industry, if you're trying to get back from a layoff, if you're trying to get promoted or just move, if you can identify what it is about you that people love doing business with you for, back that up with results, and then connect with someone deeply on really what the challenges they're trying to solve, you become the obvious hire for them. It just takes a little bit of time and a different perspective on how to look at what you bring to the table.
I'm really glad you shared this story, for many reasons. But one, the trend over the last couple of years, if you think about it, quiet quitting, bare minimum Mondays, acting your wage, the great resignation, which all the undercurrent is all like, I'm just going to do enough to get by. I'm trying to get one over on the company by just doing enough so I don't lose my job. And I find it's just the opposite. It's actually more work. This could sound crazy. It's actually more work to try to avoid work than actually
Yeah.
doing it. And
Yeah.
by actually not only doing it, by going above and beyond. Now, a lot of people criticize me. What I'm going to say next is like, I would even suggest if the company offers hybrid or in office or home, I would say go into the office, because then people see you. There's a proximity bias. They'll see your work. They'll see Claire hustling, working hard, getting things done, being that go-to woman when anything goes wrong. So what's going to happen when it comes time for like a promotion? They're going to go right to you because they've seen you in action day after day after day, killing it, doing really well. Whereas the people, and I'm not being negative about the people who work remote at all, because I can completely understand, and I've been working remote now, so I get it. But you're kind of a little bit out of sight, out of mind, and you can kind of get forgotten. So I think that's a valuable lesson for people. Instead of following those TikTok meme kind of stuff that's harmful to your long-term career, to do what you're doing, that you build a reputation that everybody will know, like years later, they're going to call up Claire and say, hey, I need something. And I know you're the woman who can make it happen. And that's invaluable. That's such great currency for building a career. So for people who are kind of hearing all that other stuff, like, no, just do whatever and do the least bit possible. No, that's not going to help you. It actually makes you worse.
Right. And I think we've all felt how it is to be on the other side of that too. When you go and you really seek an answer, or you go to the Geek Squad desk at Best Buy or wherever, and do they really figure out exactly what happened with your computer, or are they kind of shining you on so you can just move along and they can take a look at their leisure, right? So I think you're right. And knowing what you're known for, it's not easy. So if anybody's sitting there thinking, hey, I have no idea what my unique value looks like or sounds like, just know that that is totally normal, because we're so close to our entire story that often it can be really challenging to get it down and get it down to a like sound bites that about yourself and that you can talk about. But you mentioned something, Jack, that I want to touch on, because there are a lot of trending videos on TikTok and on YouTube and wherever about things you should do during a layoff or right after a layoff. And one of the first myths I want to dispel just quickly here is that what I see a lot is the advice is something to the effect of jump right into self-care, shut everything down, draw the blinds, and like curl up in your snuggie and hug your dog. And listen, there is a time for that. And I certainly did all of those things. But before you go jumping into self-care, I like to think of it as when you get laid off, it's like your house is on fire, right? It's bad and it's going to get a little bit worse, but you don't sit there in the kitchen and start cooking or like kumbaya on the floor. Okay. What you do is you grab your essentials and you get out of that house. So same thing. If a layoff happens to you, or it's coming, if you're lucky enough, like I was twice, where you were told ahead of time, at least a week or a month or a few months, the first thing you've got to do is you've got to log your wins. So anything that you generated that is something that can support your career. So numbers that you grew, and we're not talking about stealing information from the company. We're talking about if you don't yet know what the measurable impact has been of you being at this company, go find out right now. Download the data that you need, write down the numbers that you're going to want to have, so that when you talk to the next company and they say, okay, Claire, you built, you grew this business segment by how much, you'll be able to tell them, right? So first, log your numbers, get your metrics in order. And the second thing that you must do is log your contacts. So people that you've worked with who love doing business with you, people in leadership that have supported you, your colleagues, gather all of the contacts that you can, so that when you start kicking your networking into high gear, as you try to move forward, you have the two most critical pieces of information that you need to tell your story in a compelling way so that other people will buy in on you. So grab your numbers, grab your contacts, and then grab your Snuggie and your dog. Just in that order. That's all.
I think that's great advice, because as you pointed out, most people do the opposite,
Yeah.
oh, just take it easy, just turn on Netflix and get under the covers. And I get everyone's different, so some might work for them, but it's so easy to go down that sliding slope, right? Like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm just going to do it tonight, watching Netflix and eating ice cream and whatever. And then it's so
Yep.
easy to just go down. So I kind of like what you're saying is that, all right, I get it. Maybe do that later, but do something that's going to empower yourself, make you feel better about yourself. Because sometimes you just got to kind of get a win or two under your belt to get that self-esteem back up, right? Like, so if you just,
oh yeah.
right.
And
If you
when they
just
shut your computer off, that information is gone. Like it's not uncommon
Yeah.
for especially in tech, right? Or a lot of remote roles. When that announcement is made about the company doing a restructuring, you may find that your laptop is shut off by 5 o'clock that afternoon. So
Isn't
you
that
want to
cold?
just
Right? Isn't that like the worst? You'll be
bad.
working at a place for 20 years,
Oh,
and
I
then
know.
you get an email saying, "Hey, we don't need you," and then boom, you're cut off.
Yeah,
Wow.
right. It's brutal. It's brutal. It happens all the time. So it's
Crazy.
just, I think, and I know that you really stress being proactive in your career, which is what really draws me to you and what you're doing at Recruiter and all the other things you're all the other amazing things that you're doing, Jack. But one of those things is just hold yourself accountable a little bit. Give yourself even just a benchmark every 6 months, maybe Christmas, maybe Easter, or like 4th of July and New Year's, and check in with your career. Gather the contacts that you need to have in your Rolodex at home, and gather the numbers that really support the career story that eventually you're going to need to tell to somebody else. And when you do that, you keep that stuff, you keep on top of that stuff. Number one, you're going to boost your self-esteem, like Jack said, because you're going to substantiate what your impact really is and has been. And number two, you're going to support your career for the long term, so that if you work with a recruiter, you work with a resume writer, a career coach, or maybe you go it all on your own and you want to tell that story in a compelling way to sell yourself into your next job, you have the data and the information you need to get you there. So that's the first place I'd start. And snuggling the dog afterward, absolutely, but just make sure it comes third.
That's awesome. So, hey, I know we talked beforehand that you have a couple of things in the work, but not done. Would you like to share and tease a little bit? Give a preview,
Sure.
like when you go in previews in the movie theater, and maybe a little
Yes.
preview of stuff you're working on for people. And then afterwards, if you don't mind, if you could share how people could get in touch with you, how they could find you.
You bet. Absolutely. Okay. So one thing that I love to coach on is our Triple S system. And I was telling Jack backstage about this, but my husband and I calculated this number last year. I have officially seen more than 16,000 medical sales professionals' resumes up to this point. In fact, we probably need to go back and recalculate, Jack, because it's probably been a little more than that. But the reason that's important at all is because when you look at that many of anything, and I'm sure anyone here who's had any kind of repetition in their job like this, patterns start to emerge. And what we found is that there are 3 specific areas that when they're done right, that trifecta will turn your resume from a chronology and a history into a sales page for your career. And that gains you incredible momentum when you're trying to get a job, especially in medical sales, but in all industries as well. So I'm going to be releasing my Triple S system in the form of a course in the fall. And just to give you guys a little teaser, I'll tell you what the Triple S system is made of right now. It's your story, your style, and your statistics. And again, that trifecta
I like that.
is the
Cool.
key. Yeah. And we, that's what, looking back, that's what I had used unknowingly without naming it through my career and coming back from those layoffs. And now it's how we actually work with all of our clients as well. We use the Triple S system to position all of our clients for their next role in their resume and on their LinkedIn profile. So I'll be building that. It's almost done, but not quite yet. If you want to be the first to know about the Triple S system, the course that is for the fall, if you will DM me Triple S, I will make sure that you are on a list for the first to know about that course, and probably we'll have a founder's rate for those who buy in the first 6 months. So just DM me Triple S and I'd be happy to share that with you. And the other piece is, if you guys want to get in touch with me, if you need someone to bounce off what's going on with you with your layoff, if you're looking to get in or out of medical sales, or you just need someone to give you a second pair of eyes on your resume right now, just send me a DM. You can always find me on LinkedIn, where I live. And I would be delighted to chat with you and hear your story.
Well, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much. Can I give you one little silly thing before we wrap up?
Yeah.
Connecting dogs with the resume.
Of course.
All right. So this goes back to where, again, I'm going to age myself, where, you would have paper resumes, so they'd be on the computer, but then I would bring them home. Right. So I'd have I come home, I have a stack, of resumes. And then myself and my dog Buddy, who since passed away, is like an adorable, little Lassie Sheltie kind of dog. And we had this weird thing where I don't know how it started. I must have had something like a resume and I crumpled it and throw it. And anyone who has a dog, you probably see it. For some reason, they love chewing on the paper. So I would go read a resume, right? And I wasn't being rude because we still had it on a computer, but and I keep track of the ones that are good. And even if they're good, all right, because I know I have it stored, but I'll make a note, okay, remember to call Claire Davis. She's good for this job, have a note, and then take the resume, throw it, and he'd be like, chewing it all up. And then within a couple of hours, imagine the living room is littered with paper shreds. And then my wife, this was go on all the time. And then my wife would come in and she'd be like, would you stop that? What's wrong with you? What are you doing? And I'm like, and then she'd look at Buddy, and dogs, they give that cute derpy look,
oh yeah.
And then, then it's all good. And then we go through the same thing tomorrow and the next day. My other dog, Blue, doesn't do that. She's not into it. So.
Oh, come on, Blue. Have a resume party with us.
I'll try. I'll try it today. She's not,
Yeah.
So thank you.
If you can get Blue to rip up a resume, let me know. And
I'm going to try that.
Picture of Rudy
So Claire, thank you so much for coming on. I love the advice that you offered, and it's fantastic. So, and what's interesting, it crosses over all sectors. You know what I mean? You could focus in one area, but a lot, what you say, it doesn't matter whether, whatever you're in accounting or finance or whatever, it really comes across. And I think even though things are a little better right now as we have this conversation, things aren't perfect. And people are still getting laid off, getting downsized, hiring freezes, hard to get promotions. So we need to give this kind of advice. So I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to share with the audience of what's going on. So thanks. I really appreciate it, Claire. And I hope your husband feels a little better. And see your little guy. Nice little you have a wonderful family. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Jack. And
my pleasure.
I really appreciate you putting this platform up here, because I know that it means a lot. It gives a lot of great information to people. So thanks so much for having me, Jack.
Oh, you're welcome. My pleasure. Well, thank you and have a great day. And take care, everybody. Bye-bye.